on this computer. So hello and welcome. This is Erica Glessing, and we're going to talk about podcast like a boss. And really it's setting the intention. So part of what's really fun about this day and age is how much excellence you can achieve with so little effort. It's like, oh my gosh. Setting the recording and getting clarity on what you want to achieve. And then excellence is just infinitely possible. So I don't think it's ever been this easy in the history to have like a broadcast program where you're not on a set, where you're not, paying copious amounts of production dollars. Just a little background on me. I started out as a news reporter. So I have, like Lori was talking about interviewing, I've been interviewing people professionally since 1984. And my mom, before that, was a television producer. So as a child, I was on the TV set. And I actually got to see the really expensive, big productions being created in San Francisco at KQED Television, which my mom's program actually won an Emmy Award for quality. So I was raised in that environment of doing it a certain way, you know what I mean? Like it has to be done this way to be good, or it has to be done this way to be correct. And so actually my journey to podcasting was actually sloughing off most of what I learned growing up. It was a letting go of needing something to be produced in a certain way for it to be popular or helpful or to reach the people it was intended to reach. Does that make sense? Cool. So really step one is starting to interact with the creative outcome that you desire. So you want to look at what could your podcast be? What could it do? Who could it help? What would it like to achieve? How many people would it like to reach? Who is your audience? And that's the next piece.
I have a question that keeps popping just before it's almost like it's in the way of me, hearing what you're saying is with like reference to what Marie-Laure, if I'm saying that right, said, there's so many people that are podcasting. Is it not a drowned out audience? Like if so many people are doing it, how do I know that mine would get heard, I guess? Do you get what I'm asking?
Right. I think this is a phenomenal question. So I'd like to look at one of the things I've been shown lately, and it's really interesting that Marie-Laure joined us because we kind of started working on this some time back. The divine voice. It's really time for that heightened energetic shift up into the cosmos and pulling down that which is yours to share from a divine place. This is a connectivity to the higher self, a connectivity to our energy source, and our connectivity to all that is. All right? So while, yes, there is a lot of chatter everywhere, and if we look for chatter, we can find it. However, how much really, really, really delicious stuff is available? Yes, there's Walmart, but how many really beautiful clothing that's fabric that's made from love is available if you want a new sweater, right? So when you connect up into the divine, and let's just set the intention that let's just say this webinar right now that we're doing is fully connected to the divine. And that means the messages that I'm going to be receiving are going to be filtered from a connectivity with source energy. And this means a lot of people will not be able to hear this podcast, this Zoominar. Do you see? Because once we ratchet up the consciousness of our creations, we're now operating at a vibrational level that will pull the people that will be in that vibrational level, plus the people kind of like, I'd like to be at that vibrational level. I can hear that vibrational level. I can see it. I'm just not quite there. That's who it's going to pull. Does that make sense, Lori?
Yeah, and it was really interesting because once you after I asked my question and then you started talking, I was so like before, just as you said, like the divine voice, like as you were saying that, I was so aware that it was like you were channeling that information, and my heart just went oof, like that was so cool. So this is really different than your regular thing. I'm really grateful. Thank you. It's so cool.
And I just got body chills. So that's always my indication that this information is coming in exactly when it's needed for those who need it, which I always trust anyhow, right? We always trust that anyhow. So as we step into that expression of, it's really reaching up into the goodies that we get because we work on our consciousness, and then bringing other people into that light. And here's the thing about numbers, because I just got shown like there's a fear of, will I have the numbers, like to make it worth it? Right? And what if that was all a bunch of crap? Like, what if only me and the person I'm interviewing matter? What if I interview someone, in that interview they share something so exceptionally beautiful, they get an aha, I get an aha, everything, what if everything else is icing? We've already done something by us coming together, and I'm interviewing someone, and we're tapping into some message from the universe that needs to be told. Now, if 50,000 people listen to it, or if 7 people listen to it, what if one of those 7 people is going to speak in front of 1,000 people tomorrow? So they listen to Lori's podcast, something in them clicks. What I'm getting is you're able to help people click. There's something you do, specifically you, that helps people do something that clicks them. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's like they're very close to something, and then you say something and they go click. So now you do this. Someone listens to it. The next day they go speak in front of 1,000 people, right? But they have that infusion of what you gave them, and now that consciousness is going to be lifted up and shared to 1,000 people. Now, will you get credit for that? I don't know. But you might get that person who got game-changing information from you might want to work with you. And they might be a really big, high-profile person that works with you for 6 months. So it's not, you know what I got in my head yesterday? I was watching these guys that are podcasters, and they're talking about, like, it's a numbers game. And I was like, what if it isn't? What if it's the opposite? What if it's only you help one person? I mean, parenting isn't a numbers game. I got Maddie, So I was reflecting on that. So I think when you raise the vibration to a calibration that is, okay, here's an example of a podcast that I believe is going to be really awesome. She's been doing spiritual weight loss stuff, and she's going to do a podcast about change. So here's her niche, like her thing that she does. And her show is called Faith and Freedom. And it's really about making changes in your life. And so her show is like bigger than her exact thing she does in her day-to-day. Does that make sense? And then the show gives her new people to play with that are on that higher calibration of background. Does that make sense? Now, here's another show that I think I need to show you. So this one we just started yesterday, Sunday. So the show started Sunday. It's called She Shines. In this show, she connects to higher source and she shares how she gets divine guidance and how divine guidance guides her daily life. That's the whole thing. That's the whole show. So you can feel the energy of it, can't you? It's this crazy heightened vibration. And it's her divine voice. It's her gift on the planet. It's her being her, you know? It's no one else being no one else. It's just her. So it's really interesting. And what other questions do you have? I get there's a question or two right now. Marie, do you have a question?
For me.
Do you have a question?
For me, anything. Not popping right in this 2 seconds.
I get
but
that.
Just the whole, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that I get that my question is I'm just curious for more of what you have to offer here. So,
Marie, what do you think would stop us from like expressing our divine voice in our podcast? What could mess us up? What are the obstacles?
I was wondering the part of letting the inspiration be and flow through us, and the other part of trying to find who is the audience, what is the target. And personally, I have a kind of conflict between the fact that just to let it be through the divine messages, and to do the marketing stuff, that mean to choose target and things like that.
Okay. I know. I was kind of getting that. Like, how do we know? Well, one question is like, how do we know there is a tribe? Okay. So one of the ways to know if the podcast can make friends is to see if there are any other podcasts that are not the same but similar. So if we can find some that are kind of interesting, like what showed up for me was like Glenyce's radio show, right? The Glenyce show. She Shines, what I just shared with you. Lauren Polly has a show called Lighten Up with Lauren Polly. There's Happier with Gretchen Rubin. There's Tim Ferriss has a business show. So if you see that there are some shows that are like what you want to do, you pretty much can just intuit there is an audience for your show. If there are shows that exist that have life force that are, you know, operational, fun, generative, giving people stuff, bringing people, playing with people, having fun, you know, doing the stuff we want our things to do. Like, we don't want our children just to sit upstairs on his Xbox. We want him to be out and playing and doing things, right? So as we just get the vibration of our future listeners, then we actually can perceive their hunger for the awareness that we bring. They're actually hungry. They're actually, okay, this is what I'm being shown. It's really hard to explain. So let me see if I can put words on it. It's kind of odd. There's a tension when a show has a lot of life force, and it's the pulling of the information from you and the creation of it from you, and it's releasing it to them, and then there's this need for it. Do you see? So if you don't sense any tension, then that's an indication that more needs to be done to get clear. Because once you have clarity, it's generally almost, I've really never done, I'm thousands of articles in and thousands of book readers in, and I've almost never had anything where someone didn't say they needed that when they got it. Do you see? It was just what they needed. It was just the message they needed. If you post inspirational things on Facebook, it's bound to happen. You post it and someone says, oh my gosh, I had to hear that today. That's the energy of the podcast that's working. It's you're tuning into that tension of your audience, pulling it from you, almost to where you just can't not do it. You just can't not do it. It's sitting there and it's like, it has to get born. And I do experience that with podcasts generally that I produce. There's something about it that is its life force is big, and it's time. It's like this, like if I don't create you, someone else is going to create you, and I'm going to have missed the boat, because divine creation is always given to more than one person. So when you get to know your audience, generally my audiences are healers and entrepreneurs, and also kind of wannabe self-help entrepreneurs who are a little businessy, and wannabe business who are a little self-helpy. So I have this interesting place where people come to my show to either learn about how to be more of a healer if they're more in the business side. So I have like a LinkedIn audience. And then I have an audience that's totally woo-woo self-help that would like to learn some business skills or just enjoy my laugh. Just have like an 8 minutes of Erica's laugh, like what could be better than that? So my audience generally I find to be pretty warm, pretty gentle. I would say my audience tends to be super cheerful as far as they share my show and like my show forward. And then lately, as I've had more acclaim, I've had more push from people trying to get on my show, and I've had to be a no, which my show didn't require a lot in the beginning. I was mostly just a yes, and I had to sort of get people to come on. And then now people are trying to get on, and I have to sort of be the cellular membrane that guides whether or not someone could come in the show or not be in the show. And that cellular membrane, it's my job to keep that healthy. Okay? And that's the yes or no. Do they come into the show or are they out of the show? And then it's like a healthy cell. It will generate more healthy cells. So your podcast, if you create it, will generate other people to make podcasts. Like if you write a book, other people will write books. Whatever you do that paves the way will pave the way for others to do that. And so, but your job is to create a healthy place for it, a healthy home for it, a healthy generative cell for it, so that's your job, not to let in really icky, blicky people, because that's going to wreck your chemical balance. Does that make sense when I put it kind of like that? I never done it that way. I've never gotten a biological. That's probably from Marie Loire. She's really biological, right? So I look at money. I ask my shows to be generative of income. And what I found was when they are, like, everybody wins. So when my show, I conceived it in November 2016. In December, I interviewed, this is 2016, I interviewed 40 people because it was going to be daily, and I wanted to get January and February nicely done. And over of those 40 people, I received book deals because, I also publish books. I received about $8,000 in book deals from the people I invited to play with me to come on my show. That's when I got, for me, the yes at the show, because basically that covered all the VA costs and anything I'd possibly want to do with the show for a year. That was like a year of funding for the show. And then I could kind of relax and have my VA help me. I had people help me build the show. I had people do the coding. Now, actually, I do a lot of it myself. But in the beginning, I had a lot of help. And then now I've just sort of trained myself to do some of the things because I'm really fast, and it's sometimes easier for me to do it myself than to hand it off and wait for someone else to do it. That's one of my own flaws. So when you're looking at monetizing, I want to take this just for everyone who's also listening to the recording. So I'm going to take this a little bit more. What are some of the possible ways? So I was on the phone with one of my clients today. her show would like to bring her public speaking engagements. So I just saw the show having her voice showcased, doing her thing. She's really magic. And I saw it bringing her speaking engagements. And I saw that if she could take the show and share it with people that bring speakers in where she wanted to speak and she could get paid, the show would be like, what I saw was the horse in front carrying the flag. And so I saw the show carrying the flag of her chi out to people who hire people. Now, I'm not looking for like that. My show, I'm not looking for public speaking gigs. Like that's not my intention of my show. Does that make sense? I think I would structure it differently. So when I say monetizing, what happens? Does that bring up anything do we want to clear anything for you guys that are here with me right now? What does that bring up?
For me, I don't have to work, and I would actually like to. And I have 2 little grandsons and another little grandbaby on the way. And I will drop anything to look after them. And so it's almost like I'd like to find what is such a contribution to me, because they're not my source of happiness. And I'd love to choose something as my, beyond that, or inclusive, I should say, of them. So it's cool that you're a mom. So I'd like to create something that's inclusive of that. And so once I start hitting into the sort of business aspect / money aspect of this, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do it. So that's kind of what comes up for me. So,
well, so it's all about your intention. So if you do not desire that your show makes you money, I think it's pretty easy to just say, show, I don't really care if you make me money. And then
but I would like that though.
Oh,
like I would like that.
Oh,
I would, yeah.
I didn't hear you right.
That would be, well, okay. Well, then maybe that's actually what I'm saying is, no, I'd actually like to generate and actualize, create monies. That would be really fun. I like receiving that aspect of it and having the choice to play with it. It's more the fact that if I think I have to work a lot that might take me away from my family, which brings me joy, then I almost don't want to do it. But I don't get that I'm coming from a place of...
I get it.
Okay.
So do you have a question?
What would it take, I guess, to know that I could have it all, and that the receiving of money and the business aspect of it can be ease and fun and joyful too?
Right. And so there's little fun things you can do in a show. I'll just show you a couple of them. Let's see if I have anything I can show easily. So I put some widgets on my show. So these are widgets. So these are books. So every time anyone buys a book, I get like 5 or 6%. So I receive, and then I have some opt-ins for my own thing. But anytime anyone buys anything that I put up there, I get 5%. And that ends up being about $150 a month. And it couldn't be more passive. So there's something called widgets. You can also put in your show, let's say you have, like I had a speaker named Gabrielle, and then I put her book in the description of the show. And if anyone goes from here to her book, that's on my Amazon Associates. And then I'll receive, 50 cents or something. So if you wanted to do a show that was like fun grandparenting or conscious playing with kids, the ideas of things you could share that you would love, that would be really fun to have around your house as a grandma, as an Amazon Associates link, would be a super easy way to have some income without stressing. And it's just really saying, you know, my grandkids really love this goobly wah, and you can find it at Amazon, you know, and it's $12 or something. So you could recommend some things. And welcome, Smila, and I'm just going to mute you because you're, and you can unmute you if we ask some questions. So basically, you can do a lot of affiliate types of links that are pretty low profile as far as business. They don't have to be a business. Does that make sense? And the other thing you can do is, let's say you bring someone on and then they sing the praises of something like their book or something. You can put that link to their book on all your social media with the interview. Okay? The thing about Amazon Associates is, if I tend to really recommend books that are by people that I really truly recommend. Like, I'm truly vibing with that. It's very authentic. Does that make sense? So I'm staying in the integrity of that when I'm making a recommendation. I'm saying, you know, I really love this book. Go get it. Like right now, I love this book. This is one of my favorites. This is my latest, greatest book that I'm reading. And if I put an Amazon Associates link about that somewhere, then I receive, you know, 50 cents. And the book gets more people reading it, which is good because I think it's a good book. Does that feel light to you? I highly recommend anyone who's listening and who has a podcast to associate with Amazon Associates. I think you can do it in 12 countries now. And then really just look at what lights you up as far as that. And then when you're including that in the show, it used to be that advertising was the way, but now this in-show recommending has really taken off. I think you want to just put on that self-indicator, that little self-indicator that we have inside of each of us, and let it be the dominant force of your show. As long as your indicator is your dominant force and you don't like sleep with the wrong person, as long as you're letting yourself be your indicator for your show, then I think you're going to really do well with it. Now, most of the monetization from my show comes from the interactivity with the people that either come on my show or want to come on my show, or we have conversations about the show, or they want to have their own show. So most of the monetization right now for me comes from other programs that I have. They meet me through the show, and then they're like, dang, I want to play with her. And then they're like, what do you offer? And I'm like, well, these are my offers. And they go, oh, I want that one. So a lot of it just comes from being out and interacting with more people, if that makes sense. It's non-linear. And then welcome, Sumila. How are you? We're having a very interactive show. How are you? I'll mute her again. So that's kind of the thing about monetization, is you absolutely can do it. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. The most traditional way is to have something that's an opt-in. So it'd be like a free gift that you would then start emailing the person, and then you would offer them through your emails. But there's lots of different ways you can monetize your show. You can also, someone can pay you to be an inline ad in the show. And sometimes the way that the show makes you money is because you're in creation doing something you love, and it's making you high, and people just like that. So then they come to you and they just want to play with you. So it's very crazy. It's not like what we think, if that makes sense. Like, part of it's just because we honor our creation and people see us doing that, and then they're like, well, I want that. I want that. I want that integrity. I want that love. I want that joy. I want that excitement. I want that, whatever that is. And when people are listening to your podcast, I get what I just call it like psychic pay. And this is just the reward that people are listening to what I have to say. It's just that kind of wake up in the morning and someone says, man, that show really did something for me. Or that book that you wrote did something for me. And it just makes you go, it's like the Grinch, like your heart gets bigger, you know? So, any other questions so far? Also, I haven't looked in the chat box for a really long time. Let me see if there's chat. I don't know if we're using it. Okay, so then we were talking more. Anita had a question about monetizing. So really, in essence, monetizing is really asking a lot of questions about what you'd like to have sold and then how you'd like to communicate that, how you'd like the podcast to introduce and to influence people to connect with you. And then you can put in some very specific, tangible things for sale as part of having a show. The more people that your show reaches and the more people you help, the more ease there is with and it's like there's more ease and grace. Like there's more grace, if that makes sense. When you have more audience, you have more people to play with. That's generative of more money. It can't not. It's like it can't not. And you kind of also, you kind of also have to commit to that. Like if you want it to bring you money, like it's like not an afterthought. You have to just like build it in. Just like, hey, here's this show coming up. I'm going to air it on Wednesday. And then like, it's going to be about X. Okay, well, what kinds of things would I recommend around that topic that would bring me money? And then be like, well, let's say there's one on weight loss and I'm an affiliate for Catherine McIntosh's thing. And so I might go over and take a link to Catherine McIntosh's affiliate program. Affiliate means I get a percentage if I recommend something and someone else buys it. I just don't do this. I don't find that it's that generative if the people I'm recommending aren't in alignment with me. So if I'm recommending something that isn't, like the things that haven't gone that great are when I recommend things like ClickFunnels, which I like, but really almost none of my audience likes. So you have to kind of tune into your audience and say, well, what would be fun for them? What would they enjoy? What would be really joyful? If you stick in that energy of that, then I believe you're going to have an uplifted experience. And you also might say, like on the podcast I showed you earlier, She Shines, her intention is really not, her intention is teaching people how to be guided by intuition. That's her intention. If the show makes money, great. That's really not her job one for her show. Now, my show, it did come about because I wanted it to seriously bring me income. Like, I'm a mom of 3, and I require a lot of income to breathe, to live in my house. And so my show, I said to it right away, go bring me clients, go bring me money. Her show, she's saying she just wants to change the world being herself, and she's got a very clear intention of that. And that's her whole intention, if that makes sense. And so we're not going to make me horribly wrong for needing it to be lots of generative of money and make her terribly wrong or right for saying, I don't really care if it brings me money. Like, it'll be nice, but that's not her intention. So I think as long as you're true to your intention and you do all your behaviors around your intention, then it's much easier to get a winning opportunity. So any more questions about audience monetization or intention before I move on? Let's see. So look in the chat again. Keeps disappearing. Okay, sponsors. Sponsors. So one of my shows just got their first sponsor. They're super excited. They're actually going to be receiving approximately $1,000 a month from their sponsor. It's called this podcast that I built. And so trying to remember what their sponsor is. Oh, it's Organic Coffee is going to sponsor them. So they're offering them a certain amount of money, and they're going to the show will receive money every time people, it's called impressions. And so every time people get an impression, which means they've listened to the show, then the show creators will receive money from it. So typically the way that a sponsor works is, what I look at is, would they be strategic for me, and would I be strategic for them? So we want to look at what is their goal, and then what's my show's intention, and then are we a nice fit, and then would my audience really like what they have to offer? So if I can't get a yes from any of those things, then it's probably not something I'm going to work on having show up. There's no point in me bringing in a sponsor that my audience isn't hungry for, because it won't be win-win, and then it'll pleh. So if I'm looking at a sponsor, and I've so far rejected 3, so I've said no to 3 sponsors. They were all for things related to marijuana plants, and I just was like not a yes to it. Serious, Lori. So what we want to look at with sponsors is this three win-win-win-win. So it's win-win-win. So I have an audience. They would like to have their stuff in front of my audience, and my audience would love to learn about their stuff. So I did take a sponsor. It's very interesting. She's starting in January. I'll be airing her ad. And she actually teaches people about writing books, which is interesting because that's like a topic that I like. But it was so light to say yes to her. It was so fun. And so she's going to be on, I think we're starting with 6 episodes. She's going to be advertising her gift of helping people with books. And I have so many authors that I play with that I knew my audience would like her. The only odd thing about that was I had to get clear on, could I be comfortable sending people to someone else, right, that does what I love to do. But I'm really so focused on podcasting in 2019 that it was super light to send people to a new resource for helping them get clarity on writing. So I was super light about that. So she's a yes, and she's going to be my first sponsor. And I turned down sponsors. So I think, again, with getting sponsors, it's your job first to build a healthy podcast that has a lot of lively stuff and a lot of good stuff going, and you want it to be growing all the time. So when it's growing all the time, it's a healthy podcast. It's helping people. You've got an audience. Now you're in a good position to bring in sponsors. The other way that you can have a really good experience with having sponsors is if you really narrow focus the target of your podcast. So let's say you just did a podcast about fishing equipment. I don't know where that showed up. Like rods and reels, right? So you call it like the Rods and Reels podcast. And every week you talk about like flies and, worms and cool fishing poles and like the best boats and like, oh my gosh. And like you go out on a Saturday and you have an experience with a fish, and it's a pink salmon or it's a silver salmon or something, and you find out where the silver salmons live, and you give these great tips. And now your audience are fishermen and women. And so now you have this beautifully like narrow audience. On a show like that, you could have sponsors before you air. You could have people paying you to get in front of people who want that before it goes on the air. Like you wouldn't even have to wait to have your audience. If you had a sexy show about fish, you could get like fishing things to be shared, and you'd want to choose like the best rod and the best reel, right? And the best. And then you could affiliate it. So if you're totally like and I don't know that many people that are finely niched like that. Like I'm not. at all. I'm the opposite. I'm the Ellen. I like talk to cool people, bring cool ideas, change the planet, be weird. That's my show. So, but that was what I visioned when I chose my show. That was what show came to me, was being more like Ellen, which is being kind of just what's crazy and awesome on the planet right now. So if you're very niche, you're going to have a nice time finding sponsors, because they're going to want to be in front of people that you bring. And so it's a win-win. And the other thing that I came to with sponsors was, okay, this is hard to explain, and I know you guys will get it. How much integrity is required for me to allow a sponsor to give me money? And for me, the bar is wicked ass high. So I am like a no to so many companies that might want to promote my show if I don't know everything about them. So I'm crazy, whereas what I would allow for a sponsor. So that's probably not going to help me get that many sponsors. Right? Because I'm just not going to let that much in. And I like the Amazon Associates because I can pick a product that I like a book, and send it to them and feel really yummy about that. But if I had to pick a company, I'd have to kind of know the company, because I wouldn't want to have a sponsor and then go back. So my head gets a little bit clogged on sponsors. So Anita, thank you for the question. I think as long as you're strategic for them, they're strategic for you, and your audience is going to say yes to them sometimes, then you've got a good setup and you'll have a great case to make a sponsor. And then what you want to do when you are sharing your, okay, when you're, I'm going to explain it in books because it's easier than with podcasts. I have a client who wrote a book and he's going to a bookstore. Well, the bookstore doesn't care how good his book is. The bookstore cares about bringing people into the bookstore. Their whole thing is, how do we bring people into the bookstore? So what I showed him was to telepathically throw the owner images of people wanting to come to his book that he would then place in the bookstore if it was a yes. And that he had all these people pushing at him to have a location because he's on Facebook and he's really a big guy in his community in East Bay of California. And so I said, just don't even worry about the book, because people go in and they it's the best book. You have to carry my book. It's got all this stuff. It's a really good book. It's blah, blah, blah. Nah, they don't care about that. They care about, will you bring me human beings into my store? That's the big thing there. The bookstore owner, I mean, of course, some bookstore owners would love quality things on their shelves, but really they want human beings in their store. They want to play with people. They want more people to know about them. That's their store. They want to bring people in, and they don't know how to do it that easily. And they put books in there and they're like, come on in. And then like they never feel like they have enough people. So if you telepathically throw the sponsor what you can bring them, and you don't focus that much on the quality of your show, and you just say, you know what, I've got 60,000 people listen every day and they love fish and they're looking for fishing products and they really need little fishing reels, or maybe it's dogs, they're looking for dog products. So they're asking me for products like this, and I might as well show them yours. And then we're structuring it from what the sponsor wants to hear, and we're structuring it from what we can give them. And, you honestly generally can't start from that with a new podcast, because unless you already have people following you for a certain thing, you're generally going to get there about 6 months in. You're going to build your show, and then it's going to get all beautiful and big, and then a sponsor might show up. But for me, sponsorship hasn't been my monetization tool of choice, just because also, I don't know. I have this weird part of me that doesn't really like anyone telling me what to do. So that's why my book company is Happy Publishing. So there's no gatekeeper for me, because I like doing things my way. All right. We're going to talk. We have a couple more topics. And that is, I do some number oneing, and we're going to talk a little bit about frequency and duration, and then ease. So when you look at how often it will air, every show's different and every producer and creator is different. So the most common would be weekly. When you're choosing I would say if you don't really know for sure, weekly is almost always a yes. My show going into 2019, it's asking me to be daily again. And I'm a yes. So we're going to see how that goes. I went back to weekly this year, but I was daily the first year. So anyone who knows any good guests, yeah, come get on my show because it's going to be daily again. So I have themes for each day. But that's pretty rare. Most people like to have a weekly show. The length of the shows now are so variable. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 13 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. Oh my gosh, there's so much spectrum. And every single study shows that it doesn't matter. And people stress about this so crazy hard. So I want to encourage you to not care and to really get in tune with what you like as your guidance. Does that make sense? So you want to love it. And so whatever that length is for you, that's the right length. The way that people podcast is they Netflix binge listen. And so what they do is they just listen to as many shows as time they have. So if they're going on a 2-hour trip and your show's 45 minutes, they'll download 3 shows. If they're going on a 2-hour trip and your shows are 8 minutes, they have to download 12 shows. So people just use podcasts for the minutes they have that they want to listen to the podcast. So what they found is that people do a lot of on Sundays, they'll download however many they need for that. And then they binge listen. It's kind of interesting. As far as ease, I really believe strongly in ease. So, Lori, when you brought up, if I had to think about it hard like a business, it would be if the tone of the whole thing would lose its luster. That's really important to be aware of. So now we just say, okay, we're going to be committed to having this be easy. And when I say ease, I don't mean that you can't have new things that challenge you. I don't mean that sometimes you're not going to feel uncomfortable. When you're doing something new, it can feel pretty uncomfortable. You haven't done this before and you don't have the neural pathways for it. You don't know how to measure its success in the beginning, and you don't know exactly what people are going to like. And what if you get no feedback at all? And what if it's crickets, and you just do this big old thing and you spend all this time and then it's like nobody gives you any feedback and you're like, holy crap. I put my whole life and soul into this, I get nothing. So you don't know what's going to happen. You really don't. So when I say ease, it's kind of ease, but it's more like ease at letting it be free to be itself and not judge it too quick. I think that's what I mean by ease, if that makes sense. And then the last part, marketing it is super contributive, and shows that do well, the people that run them adore them. So if you adore your show, let me put it this way. If you're not loving it, then you might want to shift it and begin to have it excite you again. And this is kind of putting a lot on your show, because maybe if you've never loved anything you've ever created, then maybe start with just liking it okay. If loving something you've created has been a big, huge, difficult thing for you, then you don't have to ask yourself to be perfect on this one podcast. But if you can love it, if you can sort of adore it from the third person, if you can sort of say this show is really cool over here and I'm building it and I'm the creator of it, and it's got its own thing. It's not inside my stomach. It's over here and I'm building it and I'm adding to it and I'm letting it, then it breathes and it's much happier. It will actually rise higher than if it's all worried about itself all the time. Yeah, that was really interesting languaging, wasn't it? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my program, but I wanted to pause and see if you had questions. We've kind of gone through most of this intro on podcasting like a boss.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's so much of a question, but more the fact that, you know, as you're talking, ideas are kind of popping for me, because I'm a person who's like, I love to converse. I loved your generality of your podcast idea, because I get, for me, that would really work. And I've thought that I had to try and have like a bit of a topic, because I've had body stuff, which I'm creating something greater with. You know, I've created great with my kids and then with my grandkids, and I just love life. And sometimes it's really fun to cook a new recipe or make bath bombs. And if I had something that encompassed all of that I could talk about whatever the frick I want to talk about.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Life with Lori. How about, yeah.
Well, I actually had that thought before, and the other one that I have is, my grandma name is Lala, like Lala, and the wealthy Lala show, you know. So yeah,
that's way too much fun.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, because it encompasses, it's not wealth just of my, you know, like money. It's wealth of everything, and that's what I love is that the wealth of making bath bombs it gets me off and making a new recipe and enjoying my grandkids and communicating and with people. That would be fun. So yeah, thanks for that.
If you look at The View or something, you know, like they're just having conversations, like they're just having fun, and they're bringing in new topics all the time, and it's really generative, you know. And one thing that people love is variety. They love variety.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just, when I set my show, Lori, I have to say, it was really challenging to not do like a show about happiness, you know, because that had been my platform for like 7 years. I wrote gobs of books about it. I did 2 happiness telesummits, right? And I wasn't lit up by doing a podcast about that. Like, it didn't call me. It didn't say, Erica, make me. So I went, so my daughter Isabel actually is the one. She goes, Mom, just call it the Erica Glessing Show and you can say anything you want. And you know, I'm almost at 500,000 listens, Lori. I'm at 426,000 listens. Isn't that whack? Just being myself, really, honestly, inviting interesting people to come and chat with me. So what other questions? I feel like there might be other questions from anyone else. Yes, I did see the question in the chat before. You can do that again if you like. Let's see if there's any other questions in the chat. Okay. Wonderful. Let me think. I'm just going to tune in and see what else is coming for me to share with you all, because I'm so glad you could come today. Yeah, so Lori, what I got for your show was keeping it on a vibrational calibration that was consistent. So that if the shows had a consistent vibe, and it's kind of a inquisitive, funny, it's a little self-deprecating a little bit. There's a little bit of like, I did this, I built a bath bomb. Did you know you could even do that? I mean, who knew? I didn't know that. Like, my kids would like that recipe. So I think as you just kind of, I was curious about this, so I did a show about it, you know. My grandkids' favorite recipe, it's so easy you can't believe it, and it's cold. You just put it in the fridge. Can you believe that? You don't even have to cook, you know. And then just stuff like that just shows up. That's like, Grandma, I love that shredded coconut. You liked coconut? How did I got my kids to eat coconut? I mean, you could have so much, because coconut's really healthy, and it's really hard for us to get kids to eat things that are healthy sometimes. So I'm getting tons of ideas for your show with you. It's really pouring in big. And so I would be unbridled beyond that. I would ask you to think even wider, even wider than that. And then go out now to all the planets and pull the energy in from all the planets. Just expand yourself out even wider, really. That. Oh my gosh, yes. That is the energy we're talking about. It's super expansive. So we want to really go out, and pull the energy from all the planets to us. And then let our energy connect to the earth and bring the earth energy up. And the earth energy, where the earth meets heaven, that's where the manifestation shows up. That's where the physical things show up. So a podcast can be part of that, connecting heaven and then pulling the earth energy up. And that's kind of, now it's an expression and it becomes something different than us. So it comes out, it's not in our body anymore, and it comes out in front of us, and it's a whole thing. And it's this magic creation of that. And I really get that the bigger and lighter, that staying with the truth of it, it's going to be so generative that it'll have money for you, money for the people who listen to it. It's like they're going to get turned on. It's going to be wealth in grandchildren. Like I have wealth in children. I don't have that much wealth in certain aspects, like my car. My Honda Pilot I need a new car. But I have like this wealth of the most beautiful children ever. Like I just love my children. So one of my friends was talking to me about wealth, and she's like, well, Erica, what do you care about? And I go, well, I care about my children. She goes, okay, how is that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so wealthy. Like I don't have the Prada hand purse, but I've got like brilliant and interesting children that light up my life all the time. They're sneaking, one of them sneaking around. So that's really good. So we're actually finished and complete with that podcast, Zoominar on how to do a podcast like a boss. And I'm going to spend a few minutes on my podcast done for you with you program that I built. And I really had fun building this. I built it because in the beginning, one of my clients, let's see, one of my clients wanted her own podcast. Let's see if I can find it. That's the wrong one. There we go. There we go. So basically what happened was Curry Glossell came on my show, and then she wanted her own show. And this was in April 2017. And I said, okay, let's build you a show. But I didn't know I was doing that much. I had built mine. And then that just kind of kept rolling, and I kept having more and more people build their shows with me. And so I'm really blessed to have built this podcast done for you program. And basically I just help you with getting clear on the show, and then we name it. So some people name it themselves. They already had their name. Fiona, I think she kind of had her name, and I just said, yes, that's a great name. And then she kind of had her logo already in her head, and so I said, yes, that's a great logo. With Pratima, we actually worked on the title because she'd been teaching vulnerability, and she wanted to be bigger than that. Does that make sense? She didn't want to be in the niche of vulnerability. Like that was a good topic for her book, but she's like, hey, I have more than that. I have more than that to offer. I'm not just about vulnerability, and I want the freedom to talk about anything. But she did want it to have kind of a meditative tone. So we actually worked on that title quite a bit. Audacious, that's Jennifer was already being audacious, so that's her word. So, and then with Elena, Mi Propia Guru, she was already doing that. So that was already her thing. And Katrina, I'm trying to think of Katrina. Katrina just knew she was teaching about the elements. So I don't know where in our conversation her title came up, but it did. But I can't really like take any credit. It was like it was coming through her, and I was just helping her finalize it and form it. Then I just did a new one. It was really cool. It's called In My Sweats. and she's a mompreneur. And actually, Lori, you might want to listen to her show. She just talks to moms about fun stuff. She laughs a lot. So she did it. It came to her like in a psychic flash, the title. And it was like being a CEO, but being able to be in your sweats. And she teaches moms how to be mompreneurs. So it kind of was, she also does fitness, but it was also where she didn't want her podcast to be just fitness. Like that wasn't lighting her up. She wanted to be much bigger than that. And so that show came about. So my role is you get 4 one-on-one meetings with me, over 4 or 5, over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. And then you'll record your shows. I'll help you with whatever you need as far as like equipment recommendations. We'll submit it to iTunes on your behalf. I'll get it submitted to iTunes. And then once you get it submitted to iTunes, what happens with podcasts, I'm just going to show you, is they start getting, so this is iTunes, but then they also start getting on like Stitcher. These are the podcast directories. So my team will do all that work for you. We'll put it up on that. So here's like Podbay. Podcasts get carried for you. They get distributed on your behalf. It's crazy. It takes so little money and work. Let's see if there's any more listen notes. Let's see. Castbox. Isn't that crazy? All these directories that shows get listed on. Wow, I have 58 subscribers on Castbox. Who knew? What's that? Huh. That's interesting. So when you make a podcast, what happens is it just starts being carried all over. So my team will help create the show, help with the title if you need it, help with creation of the episodes if you need it. And then we do about 12 to 15 weeks of promoting your show to all our podcast listeners of all our shows. So this helps bring you audience and mind share, so you can kind of relax in the opening bits of your show instead of worrying like, will people watch it? You're going to get that knowledge that it will be well promoted for 12 to 15 weeks, and you can kind of focus on the content of your show and not worry about it. And then once it's about 16 weeks old, almost every show I've done so far almost has gotten listeners on their own that carry on. So I had a fail, which was me and Elena Blanca did a English and a Spanish version of her Mi Propia Guru. So we did it in English also. But the English one never really took off because she's in a group with like thousands, 10,000 Spanish-speaking followers. And so her Spanish-speaking show did really well, and we promoted both. But after I stopped promoting the English one, it just kind of like didn't keep going on its own. Partly she just wasn't being contributive enough, I guess, so she stopped doing that one. And she kept on with the Spanish-speaking one, which is fine, if that makes sense. So it's not like a guarantee that the show will take off and do well, but so far I think I've had about 18 take off and do really well. And that's why I structure that 12 weeks of promotion. So, and my podcast Done For You program is $1,500, and I offer it on this webinar. I can offer it for $11.11 is my angel special. I'll put that in an email to you guys. For coming today and for listening, for being on my list. I'll offer the angel special, but you can come back anytime for the $1,500. That's going to stay at least through a while. And that basically gives you everything you need to have a really amazing podcast done for you with you. The only thing it excludes, it's going to exclude, there's a monthly Podbean fee or Blueberry fee. That's around $8 a month. That everyone has to do their own monthly fee. So whatever that is, depends on the broadcast tool. And I think I'll conclude with something that I always forget to mention. And it's really the beginning, which is, what is a podcast? I kind of forgot to say that. And every time I speak, I forget to say it. And then people are like, what is a podcast? I'm like, oh, crap, I forgot to say that. But a podcast is really just a series of audio recordings. And it's like a radio show, but it isn't, because it isn't generally live. And so it's generally recorded. It can have video. It doesn't have to have video. And it can be a radio show that then they post as a podcast. So a podcast can be derived from a radio show, but like a radio show is not a podcast, like originally. But then a podcast can be derived from the recording of a radio show. Most of them are. So that's why it's kind of so big. And Lori opened with, there's just millions of them. And that's true. And as more and more people realize that, like, why isn't my radio show a podcast? And all I have to do is tell it. It can be. And so iTunes was the big player in this market. And then iTunes kind of is losing market share a little bit, because Google finally got that podcast was sexy. And now Google and Google Play is taking over and trying to bring podcasts to the Android audience. And so we're seeing a shift now globally where it's not just the iPad people, right? And I'll go ahead and type in my angel offer at my PayPal me, just in case anyone wants to be a yes right now. And that would be for my Podcast Done For You program. And I'll go ahead and send that in an email. And I'm really joyful you guys could come. I'm really thankful that you were here. And I hope I gave you some ideas about things. And I think that's about it. Unless we had any more questions, I have a few more minutes. Are we good? Yeah? Great. All righty. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I'm so glad that you did. Yay!